2002, the governments of the 10 ASEAN member states signed the ASEAN Agreement on Transboundary Haze Pollution. Under the AATHP, ASEAN member states established regional cooperative mechanisms through the Conference of the Parties to the ASEAN Agreement on Transboundary Haze Pollution, the committees under COP, the sub-regional ministerial steering committees on transboundary haze pollution, the technical working groups on transboundary haze pollution. The implementation of the AATHP highlights a rule-based ASEAN that will continue to strengthen its mechanism for cooperations, dialogue, information sharing, and mobilizations of technical and financial resources to address transboundary haze in the regions. The Measurable Action for Haze-Free Sustainable Land Management in Southeast Asia, or MAFSA, will be implemented as a joint initiative between the ASEAN Secretariat and IFAD, together with GEC and C4.
This project aims to strengthen ASEAN regional coordination, capacity and partnerships for data and information management, and to mobilize an estimated 1.5 billion 10-year investment framework to advance sustainable land management and haze prevention activities. The project is helping bring together a strategic partnership between key peatland and haze actors in Southeast Asia, such as the EU, GEF, GIZ, IUCN, government agencies, research institutions, development partners, the private sector, and local communities. Together, these initiatives are playing a catalytic role in making significant improvements in haze elimination and sustainable peatland management and rehabilitation. This shows how working together through multi-stakeholder partnerships can really make a difference. Keeping the momentum generated at the COP and capitalising on ongoing commitments demonstrated by all ASEAN countries and peatland partners will be essential for knowledge sharing and South-South cooperation between ASEAN and other peatland countries in the world to facilitate immediate action on the ground. Once again, I wish to reiterate that IFAD is committed to working together for sustainably managing peatlands, rehabilitating them, and tackling forest and land fires for a haze-free ASEAN and beyond, given the important role these ecosystems play in climate adaptation and mitigation.
A key outcome of the program is to enhance the availability and usage of knowledge products, including information, data collection and analysis, and interpretation of fire and haze aspects. And these include products such as early warning systems, prevention messaging, mitigation techniques, and resource sharing, and finally impact assessments of fire and haze conditions.
The MAFSA program has supported the capacity development, needs and gap analysis for ASEAN member states and is further enhancing capacity and technical skills of ASEAN member states through training and workshops. The program is also assisting to develop or improve the results management systems of the ASEAN member states related to peatland management and haze monitoring. The program will also help establish a 10-year investment framework to support the ASEAN member states in priority focal areas to improve land management, prevent peat and land fires, and thus to enhance the regional environment of Southeast Asia.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're tuning in. Welcome to day 3 of the ASEAN Peatland Partner Peatland Pavilion on the sideline of the UNFCCC COP26. My name is Gita Shahrani. I will be the moderator for today's discussion that is going to be talking about how climate adapted Southeast Asia can actually be supported by an integrated peatland management. And we will be joined by 6 distinguished speakers that represent different perspectives from all over ASEAN. We will also have representatives from the ASEAN Secretariat joining us, also conveying all of the lessons learned that have been actually experienced so far. Now, we will open this dialogue by inviting Mr. Donald Brown, Associate Vice President of IFAD, and he is going to be conveying his opening remarks regarding an innovative technology and mechanism for sustainable peatland management. Mr. Donald, the time and floor is yours.
Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you in Glasgow and around the world. I'm very happy to share these opening remarks as the Peatlands agenda is very important to IFAD. Based on IFAD's mandate of investing in rural people and enabling inclusive and sustainable transformation of rural areas, IFAD is pursuing 3 strategic objectives, one of which is strengthening the environmental sustainability and climate resilience of poor rural people's economic activities. The objective is, of course, very relevant to today's discussion. As you know, the peatlands of Southeast Asia store more than 3/4 of the global tropical peat carbon stocks. They are rich in biodiversity and millions of people depend on them for their livelihoods. Yet these areas are increasingly under threat from warming temperatures and human actions, which are turning them from being carbon sinks to carbon sources. Sustainably managing these carbon and biodiversity-rich ecosystems is crucial for climate adaptation and mitigation. I'm pleased that their role in this regard is being recognised at the COP by having a dedicated stage such as the Peatland Pavilion for the first time. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Global Peatland Initiative, the Wetlands International, University of East London, Griesfeld Meyer Centre, IUCN UK Peatlands Programme, UNEP and others for enabling this. For over a decade now, IFAD has been supporting the implementation of an ASEAN haze-free agenda by fostering sustainable peatland management in the region. IFAD's first initiative in support of this agenda was the GEF-funded ASEAN Peatland Forest Project, which completed in 2014 and paved the way to another 6 IFAD projects in the ASEAN region, 3 funded by the Global Environment Facility, the other 3 by IFAD, for a total investment of around $150 million. The IFAD-funded regional programme Measurable Action for the Haze-Free Sustainable Land Management in Southeast Asia ties all these projects together. It started in 2019 and was jointly developed with ASEAN, the Centre for International Forestry Research and the Global Environment Centre. This project aims to strengthen ASEAN regional coordination, capacity and partnerships for data and information management and to mobilise an estimated $1.5 billion 10-year investment framework to advance sustainable land management and haze prevention activities. The project is helping bring together a strategic partnership between key peatland and haze actors in Southeast Asia, such as the EU, GEF, GIZ, IUCN, government agencies, research institutions, development partners, the private sector, and local communities. Together, these initiatives are playing a catalytic role in making significant improvements in haze elimination and sustainable peatland management and rehabilitation. This shows how working together through multi-stakeholder partnerships can really make a difference. Keeping the momentum generated at the COP and capitalising on ongoing commitments demonstrated by all ASEAN countries and peatland partners will be essential for knowledge sharing and South-South cooperation between ASEAN and other peatland countries in the world to facilitate immediate action on the ground. Once again, I wish to reiterate that IFAD is committed to working together for sustainably managing peatlands, rehabilitating them, and tackling forest and land fires for a haze-free ASEAN and beyond, given the important role these ecosystems play in climate adaptation and mitigation. I wish you a very productive event.
Thank you so much, Mr. Donald. Mr. Donald is the Associate Vice President for International Fund for Agricultural Development, or IFAD. And as he was mentioning, it's actually a historical moment that all of the panelists becomes a unity here, celebrating how peat becomes a critical part of international climate agreement by actually being hosted in its own pavilion, the first time in history. So without further ado, I would love to begin the first panel, and we will have three distinguished speakers in the first part of our dialogue, and we will actually talk about how multi-stakeholders approach is one of the critical pathway towards building sustainable peatland and also fire management. Now, for those of you that are tuning in from all of your home and virtually, please do not hesitate to actually interact with all of the speakers. You can use the chat function on the right-hand side of the screen. And then all of the questions that's submitted there will be curated and discussed during the Q&A session. So I would love to invite our first speaker, Mr. Berthold Hassler, the team leader of SUPA project in GIZ. And also would also welcome the second speaker, Mr. Peter Hannington, Chief Technical Advisor of GEF Sustainable Management of Peatland Ecosystem in Mekong countries, in the Mekong Peatland Project, IUCN. And also we have joining us from Glasgow, from the Peatland Pavilion, Mr. Michael Brady, Team Leader, Value Chains, Finance and Investment from C4. So this is all of the speakers that's going to be joining us in the first part of the panel. Hello, okay, everybody is here. And to welcome the first panel, we will actually have a context setting presented by Dr. Fong Sok, representing the ASEAN Secretariat. Dr. Fong Sok, the time and floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jenny, for this. Again, this is a great opportunity for me to deliver a key message from the remark for today's session on the toward climate adapted Southeast Asia through integrated peatland management. I think it's another important opportunity that I would like to greeting to all of you. A very good day to all of you participating in Glasgow, and good evening for those participating from the ASEAN region and other part of ASEAN and other part of the world. So on behalf of the chair of ASEAN Task Force on Peatland, ATFP, Mr. Datu Tunggu Seko, Director of the Biodiversity Management Bureau, Department of Environment and Natural Resources of the Philippines, I welcome everyone to the ASEAN Peatland side event at the Peatland Pavilion. This important event is a part of a day two side event of ASEAN, and the first held yesterday under the theme of the important of ASEAN peatland in contributing to the global climate change mitigation, and today it's become more important with the title toward the climate adaptive Southeast Asia through integrated peatland management. The two side events are organized by ASEAN Peatland Partner with the support of the EU, the Germany, and also with the International Fund for Agriculture in collaboration with the UN Environment Global Peatland Initiative, as we said earlier. So this is a very good opportunity. I wish to extend the appreciation to ASEAN member states for their commitment and active contribution to the global climate agenda, as well as ASEAN Peatland Partner for continued support to our region, not only to the climate change, but also particularly to the peatland. Yesterday, we have heard the lesson learned, successes, challenge, and opportunity from some of the ASEAN member states on the peatland restoration management and its contribution to the national determined contribution from, in particularly, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Laos, PDO, and the Philippines, and also forward key recommendations for developing the ASEAN peatland management strategy, as well as the national action plan of the peatland management in ASEAN member states. So with that, I think the climate change issue, it also highlighted what is important in the peatland management agenda. What was clear from yesterday, even also climate change become defining and the most challenging sustainable development issue of the 21st century in ASEAN. So the region in particularly widely considered as one of the world's most vulnerable region to the impact of climate change. The adverse impact in which will strengthen the global economic stability and security as they are disrupt industrial and business operations. In the last 45 years, the more economically damaging event in ASEAN region that occur were climate-related ones, such as in 2011, the flood in Thailand, the typhoon Yolanda, known as typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines in 2013. Moreover, ASEAN peatland have faced cumulatively severe degradation driven by economic activity ranging from logging to agriculture and industrial crop. So Southeast Asia tropical peatland, as I say, it's a lot of contribution, especially to the tropical peat volume as well as to the GHG emission and sequestration. With that, I mean, we also have noted the annual clearance of using fire not only create the 6 blanket haze cover 3 million kilometers of Southeast Asia, but affected the people here significantly and contribute to GHG emission about 1.3 to 3.4 to 3.1 of GHG global emission from that fuel vessel combustion. I mean, with that, we applaud and recognize the ASEAN member states for their commitment to address climate change issue through the implementation of the Paris Agreement, as well as ASEAN Peatland Management Strategy. AMS is firmly committed to renew its ambition to reduce GHG emission on average in the region from under 20% to over 30% by 2030. Furthermore, all AMA have developed their national communication along with some national adaptation plan on climate change. So the climate action in ASEAN region is taking in multiple fronts at various scale and sector. Among other, peatland is an essential asset, not only for environment and climate change, but for economic, community, livelihood, and public health when it comes to transboundary haze impact. This side event is a very special for us to discuss and provide you all the opportunity, a clear for a way forward how the climate change can be part of the peatland management and can be a shared solution for your benefit, peatland and climate change. To realize this ambition, however, no one country, no one actor could address the mounting challenge of climate change alone. It requires global-wide society approach. The state actor, non-state, especially business, play important role in ensuring the climate targets are met, while the climate change poses risk and also present an opportunity for transition to green economy, low carbon development. Commitment and active participation of key economic sector, energy, transport, agriculture, and other will certainly make a significant impact to our global climate agenda. With that, we believe the peatland partner, which is play important. I mean, IUCN, GIZ, WRI, TO, CRC, GEC, C4 are supporting AMA to address the peatland fire and haze pollution issue by fostering this the sustainable peatland management in ASEAN region in partnership with the Global Environmental Facility, the EU, and IFAD. Ladies and gentlemen, today we will hear more about the partnership collaborative approach from various ASEAN peatland partner projects, sharing innovative technology, novel approach, as well as mechanism for sustainable peatland management in consideration of the climate as one of the key contributing factors that we need to make a difference. The project aims to support ASEAN endeavor in combating transboundary haze pollution and peatland fire, support the objective of ASEAN peatland management strategy through collective action, enhance cooperation, and improve sustainable management, mitigation impact of climate change, manage risk, wildfire, and reduce transboundary haze pollution. So toward the end of this, I hope this event will raise awareness of the importance of peatland restoration management for our region, and also the way we can apply the climate adaptive approach to Southeast Asia in our integrated peatland management, and the importance of peatland restoration and management in the way to deal with the climate change issue will become a significant agenda that including the impact assessment of climate change on the peatland issue in the region, and also the adaptive approach and the resource mobilization, how this can be join hand together and can address this global commitment for the effort of our region. With that, I believe this is the opportunity that we all are focused on this multi-stakeholder technology and also the investment plan can put together as a new way how we can enhance the peatland and climate change as a part of a shared solution for our region. So thank you very much. I look forward to the successful event. All the best to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vong Sok, the head of the Environment Division, Sustainable Development Directorate, ASEAN Sociocultural Community Department. And with that, we will begin with the first panel, and we will welcome the first speaker. And you will have 10 minutes representing SUPA project from GIZ, Mr. Berthold Hassler. Trying to find your view. Yes, you're here. Great. The time and floor is yours. I will remind you when there's 1 minute left.
Thank you very much, Geeta. That's my screen on.
Yes, we can see it clearly.
Okay, thank you very much, Geeta. Good day to Glasgow. Good evening from Indonesia. My name is Berthold Hassler. I'm the team leader of the project Sustainable Use of Peatland and Haze Mitigation in ASEAN, Super Repeat, Component 1. I work for GIZ, as already mentioned, and the project Super Repeat is funded by the German Ministry of Environment and the European Union. In this session, I will talk about capacity building for regional mapping and inventory in ASEAN to safeguard and restore peatland habitats as carbon sinks. Peatlands cover about 24 million hectares in the ASEAN region, but what is their condition? Where do we find them? The extent of peatlands in ASEAN outside Indonesia and Malaysia is neither well known nor well documented. As you already know, peatlands store a high amount of carbon and often of high biodiversity. In order for ASEAN member states to be able to plan more precisely which measures for peatlands are necessary and to develop action plans for their management, those countries need data on the location, size, condition, and drivers of degradation of peatlands. Peatland identification is the first step in peatland management and conservation. However, the identification of peatlands through field-based methods is time-consuming and expensive. And since many ASEAN countries are large and many areas are remote, many of these areas are difficult to be assessed on the ground. The majority of peatlands in Indonesia and Malaysia show a dome structure, but especially in the northern ASEAN member states, other types of peatlands have been identified, like mangrove lagoon or lake bassins, or they might also be floating. So this graph illustrates a peat dome. Most of the lowland peat swarms in Southeast Asia are in essence raised bogs with a dome-shaped landform, which means Dome peat is raised above the surrounding landscape and receives water from only from precipitation, while a fan is situated in depressions and receives water from surface runoff or groundwater. Fans have a limited distribution, being confined to edges of coastal lagoons, the banks and flood zones of rivers and the margins of lakes. This is this is an example of an approach to identify peatlands via remote sensing, which was developed by Remote Sensing Solutions Munich, with options available at a no cost via the Copernicus program. A digital elevation model can be used to identify bogs and fens based on their surface topography. Sentinel-1 can be used to identify waterlogged soils, and Sentinel-2 multispectral satellite imagery can be used to identify peat-specific vegetation cover, land use, and drainage patterns. The result of this exercise identifies area to be targeted via ground truthing and field inventory. So there's a wide variety of options available for different applications. As the graphic in the upper left of this image shows, the number of available satellite systems is increasing at an almost exponential rate, hopefully not future spacecraft. One criteria for choosing a system is whether this system and the data is freely available. If you want to assess historical data on land use and land use change, you simply can't get around Landsat. With Landsat, Landsat land use change can be traced back up to 40 years, and Landsat has a resolution of 30 meters. Sentinel-2 for detection of vegetation and land cover is available for the past 5 years and has already a resolution of 10 meters. To detect peatlands, you can also use Sentinel-1 to identify soil moisture, burnt areas, water bodies, and vegetation patterns. This can be combined with a digital elevation model generated by a radar system such as TandemX. Nowadays, algorithms are key. In our case, they allow the systematic analysis of the collected data. And finally, we have drawn up an indicative map of peatlands to be spot checked on the ground. This is an example from Laos. So how do we develop a country-specific capacity development plan for ASEAN countries? What is the focus of peat management? Preservation of carbon stock, fire prevention, conservation of high conservation value areas, habitat management, community empowerment, restoration, water management of the hydrological units, biodiversity or biomass assessment, vulnerability assessment, resilience in times of pandemics. And how do we channel this into national action plans for peatland management? Are peatlands playing a role in the national determined contributions of, or should they play a role? Are peatlands part of the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan? Which data with which accuracy is required? And what capacity do you need to gather the information you need to make decisions? That are the questions. Next. So why does tailored peat management matter? One reason is fire. Fires in peatlands occur regularly, mostly in the dry season, especially in El Nino years. Once a peat fire is burning, it can hardly be extinguished. So drainage, fire, deforestation, the peat swamp nightmare. This leads to degradation, biodiversity loss, oxidation, CO2 emission, destruction of the physical structure, reduced peatland resilience in times of pandemics, and in dry season, this area is prone to fire. So what is to be done? Is immediate action necessary because the next dry season is imminent? One thing is clear, peat must be kept wet. Do you want to restore? Which ecosystem function do you start with? The most disturbed one? The restoration of which areas makes sense and is feasible? Do you want to reforest area by area, or do you prefer initial initial limited planting to enhance the variety of species in a natural succession process? What about the communities in this area? Do you want to introduce paludiculture systems? A lot of questions. And yes, not only the state agencies on national level, regional level and local level, but also the communities need to be involved and to be trained. So what are the short and long-term benefits for local communities? So my last slide shows a restoration activity in degraded peatlands. You can imagine restoration can be expensive. We must choose well. And I assume that we will get some answers to my questions in the following presentations by my colleague of this session. Thank you very much. Back to you, Gita.
Thank you so much, Mr. Berthold. You're actually under time, so thank you for donating 1 more minute for the discussion session later. We're going to invite the second speaker, Mr. Peter Hannington, representing the IUCN. Mr. Peter is the Chief Technical Advisor for GAF Sustainable Management of Peatland Ecosystem in Mekong countries. The time and floor is yours, another 10 minutes.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Just make sure. Okay. So yes,
I think, sorry, Mr. Peter, I think your slide is, it's showing the presenter view. So maybe you should shift the display, swap display, yes.
Okay.
Yes, now it's perfect.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, thanks very much for that. So yeah, my name is Peter Hannington. I'm the Chief Technical Advisor at IUCN Lao PDR Office. It's a great pleasure to present an overview of our Mekong Peatlands project, which is implemented in 3 Mekong countries, Cambodia, Lao PDR, and Myanmar. And so just an overview of who the partners are. So IUCN is the GEF implementing agency, so it's a GEF-funded project. And it's implemented in 3 countries by 3 government partners. So departments under the various ministries in Cambodia, Lao PDR, and Myanmar. And so the project is structured around that the country partners play a pivotal role in managing budgets and implementing on-ground activities. So in many respects, in many activities, it's a learning by doing type of capacity building by the country partners. So in support of the country partners, IUCN also plays a role in coordinating at a regional level or sub-regional level. And that's myself as CTA and also some administrative and financial support from officers in IUCN. Importantly, we have the Global Environment Centre as a key technical partner that provides sort of technical overview and guidance to our 3 country partners. And they've been working on peatland systems in the region for many decades and have worked in all 3 countries in some very initial work in peatlands surveys, which I will show some results in later slides. In Myanmar, there's a non-government organisation, an IUCN member, who also provides a support for the government partner in Myanmar, FRIDA. I'll just take note now that unfortunately, you know, our activities in Myanmar are on hold and suspended because of the situation, and yeah, we're not too sure how that will pan out. Whoops. So the project is a 4-year project. It's implemented until mid-June 2023. Its overall project objectives is to support the project, support the countries to enhance sustainable management of peatland ecosystems for conservation of biodiversity and greenhouse gas emission reduction. The project is formulated in 4 components. The first being assessment and documentation of peatlands. The second is capacity development, particularly for government departments and working with them to mainstream, or opportunities to mainstream peatlands into governance and policies. Component 3 is focused on communities, so working with communities around livelihoods, sustainable use of peatland resources in all 3 countries. And component 4 is around regional cooperation. So just very quickly, some key activities of the project. We'll look at working with developing maps of potential peatlands and also surveying peatlands, confirming peatlands and mapping them in all 3 countries. As Berthold said in the last presentation, a lot is unknown in all 3 countries about where the peatlands are. So the more we look, the more we find. Another important part of our work is to look at functions and values of peatlands. So we choose a particular peatland in each of the 3 countries and do some more in-depth studies. And we use those as case studies to inform our livelihood interventions and activities, but also to raise awareness. There's not a lot of understanding and awareness around the functions of peatlands and their values. So this is an important part of our work. I've got a few slides now just to show you of some of the results from past and current activities in all 3 Mekong countries about the types of peatlands we've found. So for starting off in Cambodia, there's some very interesting peatlands that have been identified as in the coastal zone, and they are mangrove peatlands. So in previous surveys that are led by GC in 2014-15, an area of some 10,000 hectares have already been identified and mapped as mangrove peatlands. And now our team in country in Cambodia have now identified an additional almost 14,000 hectares that they earmarked for surveys in the coming months. You can see by this map of Cambodia, the coastal region there, the dark red, if you can make it out, are the areas that are known as 10,000 hectares of mangrove peats. And in the adjacent coastal areas there, they've identified areas that will be surveyed. They've also extended their assessments into areas around Tonle Sap Lake and the Mekong River. And with support from Super Project and the Mekong Peatland Project, the teams in Cambodia hope to go out and do some surveys to confirm upwards of 85,000 hectares of potential peatland areas. What's interesting in these northern ASEAN countries is that the other very common types of peatlands that are found are these smaller pond or infield pond and infield swamp peatlands, and some of them which are buried. And so the examples here are taken from Lao PDR, and they're quite small. Some of them are less than 50 hectares in size and smaller. Some of them are flooded during the flood season and dry out during the dry season. They're situated in floodplains. They're situated in catchments that receive inputs from major river floods and also catchment inputs. So they're a little bit different than some of the southern peatland types, where you tend to get more inputs from the catchment. So a higher level of non-organic or inorganic materials. Here's another example from Myanmar, where you've got a slightly larger infield and partly buried peatland ecosystem, and it is undercropped. It's cropped by locals with vegetable crops, potatoes and the like. This is in southern part of Lao PDR in Champasak, the largest known peatland that have been identified so far in Laos is Bunkit Nong, part of the Bunkit Nong Ramsar site, and that's that larger 500 hectare infield red area. But what's interesting that across the landscape, the more the teams look, the more we find these smaller peatlands, little peatlands. So there's These red outlined areas are potential peatland areas that need survey and confirming. As mentioned by Bethol, the super project we're also working quite closely with the super project because there are other potential areas in all three countries, particularly in Laos, this example in Laos, where we suspect and we know there are other areas of peatlands. So there's a big effort underway to map potential peatlands, but also for our survey teams to go in and check and confirm the presence of peat. I need to move a bit more quickly, I think. Another typical peatland system that is present in all three countries, well, we suspect in Cambodia, but around the lake, are these lakeshore and floating peatlands. And so there's a particularly interesting place, Inle Lake in Myanmar, where the locals for 100+ years have been using the peat to construct these floating vegetable gardens in which they're growing a substantial amount of tomatoes. So I encourage anyone that's listening to jump on Google Earth and have a look at Inle Lake. You'll see these fantastic rows and rows of peatlands. So I know I've running out of time, and This is sorry, my phone's going off. This is my last slide, and there's also a very interesting calcareous spring dome that's been identified in just near Inle Lake in Myanmar, something that's quite unique regionally and globally, I think. So that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Peter, and very interested.
I have to go a little bit quicker at the end there.
No worries, my alarm just went off, but thank you so much for the interesting visuals as well. I'm pretty sure people are going to be starting Googling Lake Inle as well to figure out where it's located. Thank you so much. So up to our third speaker for the first session, joining us from Glasgow. This is Dr. Michael Brady, the team leader, value chains, finance and investment from the Center for International Forestry Research, or CIFOR. The time and floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Geeta. Sound check, everything okay? Great. Okay. Well, as Geeta mentioned, I work with CIFOR, Center for International Forestry Research. I'm the first of, So I'm the first of three speakers, me now and then two in the next session, from the MAFSA program that Donnell mentioned earlier. This is the Measurable Action for Haze-Free Sustainable Land Management in Southeast Asia, or MAFSA. And MAFSA is contributing to the reduction of transboundary haze pollution from fires in peatlands through enhanced regional coordination, investments, and knowledge management. And that's the particular focus of my talk today. I'll be talking about the availability and usage of knowledge products on fire, haze, and peatlands in Southeast Asia. My two other colleagues will be talking about capacity strengthening and information management and implementation in the next two talks. So I'm going to talk about a stocktake analysis. This is developed for the ASEAN Haze Portal for knowledge exchange and collaboration. I'll talk about the analysis that we've performed on knowledge products on peatlands, fire and haze in ASEAN, the generation of new knowledge products. I think the last two speakers mentioned some new information, new peatlands that clearly need to be documented well throughout ASEAN. And I'll I'll conclude my talk with an explanation of a new ASEAN Haze portal as a knowledge repository. Well, I think in this room there's Faisal and myself that arrived in Southeast Asia in 1981. And so we've been through many fire and El Nino periods, 1983, 1986 in particular. And at that point, there was very little understood about fire, peatlands, and haze. Over that time, since now, 35 plus years, there's been a lot of information generated. And the MAFSA program partly recognized that 30 years of knowledge is not very well organized, systematically documented, available easily, and available in the languages of ASEAN. So part of the function of the MAFSA program is to take stock of 30 years of knowledge product development and help put that in a more accessible format. So C4 undertook a very large literature review. We went through scientific databases, partner publications, government publications from ASEAN member states. And we ended up classifying the literature that we identified through a number of coding approaches. So we looked at 5 thematic areas, all around fire, and peatlands, and haze. These include policies, tenure topics, livelihoods, best practices, and monitoring. And we cross-referenced this literature search against what we call integrated fire management. So typically consisting of 4 key components: fire prevention, preparedness, suppression, and recovery. And of course, climate change as a cross-cutting theme. So we identified about 2,000 different publications over the last 30 years plus, and systematically classified and assessed those according to the different themes. So some of the highlights of that 30 years worth of knowledge, much of that, as not a surprise, was generated around fires, haze, peatlands in Indonesia. The second category is knowledge products at the regional level, so ASEAN, Southeast Asia. Malaysia, a country also having substantial peatlands. Again, not surprising, most of the knowledge products in these top 2 countries. Very interesting to hear from Peter on new peatland discoveries in northern ASEAN, and so clearly a task for us to stocktake these new knowledge products being developed. Most of the knowledge products that we've analyzed, these 2,000 documents, really had a large focus on monitoring. So impacts, water management, technologies for fire detection, monitoring, a lot of technical, neat technology that's been developed, quite a focus on that. Second topic that really stood out in the stocktake was on tenure, so land use around the cause of fire occurrence, peat locations, ownership structure, and associated practices. I think you all know that wildland fire in Southeast Asia is predominantly a human-caused So land tenure is a very important issue, and a number of other thematic areas that I've mentioned. A lot of the studies emphasized fire prevention as a key measure, and this is reflected in the light green or yellow portion of these circles, representing the proportion according to the four elements of integrated fire management. So prevention being the light green. You can see that in all thematic areas, prevention's been a big focus of the literature. So policies, tenure, monitoring, economics, and best practices. Much less focus on suppression, recovery, and preparedness. In some ways this makes sense. I mentioned earlier, most of the fires are human-caused, so prevention has been recognized as an important fire management approach almost from the beginning. Through the stocktake analysis, we have had a series of workshops. A large focus of MAFSA is on stakeholder engagement. So we presented the stocktake analysis at a number of consultation events and forums, and tried to get a sense from stakeholders what they thought were priority existing knowledge products. So when we presented not the list of 2,000, but we narrowed it down to 15 existing knowledge products, and got a sense of the priorities for those knowledge products. And some of these are outdated, going back to 1990. Some of the products are old. Some of them are only in one language. And some of them are voluminous, 200 or 300 page documents. So as part of the program, we are updating and reissuing a selected number of existing knowledge products to make them more accessible, to produce these in different languages. We're also, through the analysis, identified some gaps in knowledge. And I've listed on the slide 4 or 5 different gaps that we identified, again, through some workshops and engagement with stakeholders. We've prioritized which gaps MAFSA should address and develop some new knowledge products. And so I've listed these on the slide. For example, mapping and detection of burned area is not practiced. Only Indonesia is producing annual burned area maps each year. So this is a key gap. And so we'll be developing some guidelines and methodology, trying to roll that out as an ASEAN guideline for burned area mapping. Another activity is developing a new HAZE portal, an internet portal, where a lot of this reorganized knowledge products will be posted on the portal in a repository. And this will be a way for all ASEAN member states to access these this collection of knowledge products in a new portal, as well as an online tool for collaborative exchange. I won't go into details. We've got a short video that I'd like to show on the HAZE portal as a knowledge repository. And with that, I'll thank you very much, and maybe we can see the video. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Michael, and also congratulations for ASEAN Haze Portal from the first session, ladies and gentlemen, joining online and also in the pavilion. We've got some footage in the pavilion. It seems to be almost full. And we've listened from the speakers in the first panel talking about how you need to actually identify the focus of peatland management in order to determine what type of data do you need and what type of level of accuracy do you require. And we also heard about the new discoveries in different part of ASEAN on peat that needs to be integrated into the knowledge management system that can actually be a strong basis for collaboration. Now, after the first panel, we are going to now welcome the second part of the session today, and would love to remind you again, if you have any question, feel free to actually put it under the virtual chat, and we're actually curating the questions right now. We have a couple of questions already in, and you can actually vote for the question that you like the most, and we will be discussing it in the discussion session after the second panel. Now, to begin the session 2, that is going to be also communicating about how multi-stakeholders approach and its mechanic is actually creating a lot of lessons learned in ASEAN. We're going to welcome the first speaker, Dr. Faisal Parish, that's also joining us from Glasgow, from the Peat Pavilion. He is the director of GEC, and he's going to share with us about the concept of sustainable financing mechanism for peatland management and haze control in ASEAN. The time and floor is yours for the next 10 minutes, Faisal.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. What I aim to highlight to you is about the initiative by the ASEAN Secretariat and member states to develop a 10-year investment framework for haze-free sustainable land management in Southeast Asia over the next 10 years, which coincides with the extended phase of the ASEAN Peatland Management Strategy. Within Southeast Asia, we are facing major challenge from land and forest fires. And this is becoming or recognized as one of the most serious regional environmental problems with transboundary haze at times. This is the satellite image from October 1997 when the smoke cloud was covering 10 million square kilometers and impacting people in 6 countries. So 90% of the transboundary haze in the ASEAN region is coming in the southern ASEAN region is coming from peatland fires because they produce so much more smoke than mineral soil fires, and then they are much persistent, burning for weeks or months at a time. But also in the northern portion of ASEAN, there are also fires, and in the last 5 to 10 years, this has become an increasing problem in the northern ASEAN region. But in this region, it's not peatland dominating, it's more land fires from 2 types, mainly shifting cultivation, and secondly, in recent years, very large expanded production of contract farming, particularly for maize to supply to the animal feed production. And this has led to conversion of vast area of forest and grassland in the northern ASEAN, and frequent burning not only of the original vegetation, but of the agricultural residue. And this cloaks the northern ASEAN region in quite severe smoke, which has a very severe impact on the community. So both serious health problems. In the recent 2015 haze episode, it was estimated by Harvard University that 100,000 additional deaths occurred in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore during the severe haze. And this is happening every year, or every haze event is leading to elevated death rates and severe large numbers of people hospitalized. More than 500,000 to 1 million people hospitalized with respiratory problems, and as mentioned, up to 100,000 additional deaths. And this has not been fully quantified in the northern ASEAN region, but very severe impact on the population. So what are the overall impacts? Fires every year burn up to 40 million hectares of land, majority in terms of area in the northern ASEAN region. More than 50 million people are impacted by the smoke haze, both locally and through transboundary haze. Estimated in Indonesia alone, 16 billion US dollars of direct losses in 2015 and 5.2 billion in 2019. Up to 2 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent emitted every year from the region, which makes it the #1 hotspot from greenhouse gas emission from land use change globally. And also decreased tourist arrivals and much broader impact on shipping, trade, flights, and operation of other businesses, as well as reduced agricultural productivity, in some cases 30% reduction of agricultural productivity during times of severe haze because of reduced sunlight penetration. So what do we need to do about that? What ASEAN is trying to do is to look at creating a mechanism or framework to encourage investment in haze-free land management in ASEAN. That would involve the scaling up of peatland rewetting and restoration, a further 2 to 4 million hectares, enhancing peatland management practices in existing agricultural plantations on peat, 3 to 5 million hectares, and over time phasing out those activities, converting the drained agriculture on peat to polluticulture or carbon farming, scaling up agroforestry as alternative to the slash and burn practice, particularly in the northern ASEAN region. There's more than 5 million hectares impacted by that. And then modify the contract maize production practices which are occurring in the northern ASEAN region through zero burning, improved soil management, enhanced soil carbon management, and decreased greenhouse gas emissions. We also need to invest in strengthened capacity for fire prevention, early warning, improved response, tracking, and results management. And this needs to be combined with climate change mitigation and adaptation, biodiversity, and land degradation targets. So what are the potential areas requiring funds for haze-free ASEAN? Sustainable agriculture, fire prevention tools and equipment, development of policy and regulatory frameworks, air quality monitoring and support, climate change mitigation and action, ecosystem restoration, peatland conservation, capacity building and early warning and monitoring, microfinance for community sustainable land management, forest conservation and rehabilitation, commodity sector best practice and supply chain governance, and results management and reporting. So a broad range of different areas need investment in the coming 10 years to really lead to a haze-free ASEAN. I think the MAFSA program has been introduced before, but this is one of the thrusts supported under the MAFSA program is developing the 10-year investment framework. And that's going to build on existing frameworks, such as the ASEAN Haze-Free Roadmap, which ran up to 2020, the ASEAN Blueprint 2025, the Economic Community, the ASEAN Peatland Management Strategy, which is just about to enter a new phase up to 2030, and various national peatland action plans. In addition, there are various new frameworks like the post-COVID development framework for ASEAN, and there are other mechanisms that will be linked in. ASEAN has also adopted ASEAN guidelines on peatland fire management in 2016, which has made a paradigm shift from a focus on firefighting to fire prevention, with a recognition that 70% of the effort needs to be under prevention and the balance under preparedness, suppression, and recovery. So what is the importance of the investment framework? At the moment, there have been many plans developed, but these plans have not come with dedicated resource allocations to support the implementation. They've been developed by the governments and been left to government national funding. And many countries in the region, particularly in the northern ASEAN region, in the Mekong sub-region, governments do not have adequate resources to make the transformative changes in land management that are needed to prevent fire and transboundary haze. So we recognize that high level of investment are needed to facilitate haze-free land management and solve the transboundary haze issue. But at the same time, there is a growing amount of interest and investment available at the global level, as we can see from many of the events, discussions, commitments, and hopefully later today, since it's Finance Day, we're going to hear some formal announcement on global commitments for financing related to climate change. But linking those commitments and offers and interest at the global level with the requirements and opportunities at the regional and country level, needs a framework to guide it. So the aim of the investment framework is to create a platform to bring different stakeholders, potential funders, potential supporters together, and link them with the particular initiatives or programs at country, local, and at sub-regional level. So the development of the investment framework will involve engagement of a broad range of stakeholders, from the government to civil society to private sector, commodity sector, finance and insurance sectors. The initial target for the framework is $1.5 billion US, but that may expand over time, and that may be scaled up in stepwise manner through single or multiple mechanisms. We're still at the early stage, but we're looking at other mechanisms which are already established, and maybe part of the work will be integrated through these frameworks, such as the COVID-19 ASEAN Response Fund, the ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility that was topped up by 600 million yesterday in a side event at the GCF and GF Pavilion, and the ASAP Smallholder Adaptation Scheme coordinated by IFAD. There are also a range of capacity development needs in the region that need to be addressed by the investment, and basically the methodology will be to bring together, map out the stakeholders, bring stakeholders together over a period of 12 to 18 months, and create a framework of what needs to be done and what are the modalities to do it. It's likely to be a multiple modality, with a regional multi-donor trust fund being one, two, matchmaking to bring investors and projects together. So we have identified many funds, and hopefully during the COP we will identify more. And then the immediate steps will be to organize various scoping meetings, bring together stakeholders, particularly those from investment and finance sectors, document existing programs, and develop the process of the investment framework. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Faisal, for sharing with us the importance of investment framework and the fact that if you build a perfect plan without an allocated resources, then this is not implementable. Now we'll move to the next speaker, Dr. Nerarta Samadi, the Director of WRI Indonesia, also representing SUPA C2, People for Forest Consortium, which is a consortium that consists of WRI Indonesia, IDH, and also TRCRC. The time and floor is yours, Pak Nerarta, or Pak Koni, as we know him, for the next 10 minutes.
Thank you. I will share my screen. Just give me a second. Do you see my screen well?
I think it's a bit disconnected, Pak. It's cut in half, basically. Maybe you can try again.
Yeah. We'll do that. Come on. Is it good?
I think it's on the way. It's still a yes. Now it's perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you. So this is a part of the SUPA project. This is the component 2, which is implemented by a consortium of WRI Indonesia, TRCRC Malaysia, and IDH Indonesia. Let me move my slide. Is it not moving? Yep. Okay, so People for Peat coalition comprised of 3 organizations, as I mentioned earlier on, each with different strengths. Like, for example, WRI Indonesia is known to be a research institution, while TRCRC having a strength on community development, and IDH is on a private sector business side of things. There are 3 pillars here, which are data and information, business and investment, and outreach and advocacy, which aim to achieve improve sustainable management of peatland, reduce fires and haze in the ASEAN region through integrated action of the non-state actors. The 3 years of project funded by the European Union hope to achieve the ultimate goal in reducing fires and haze in the ASEAN regions. Each pillar is designed to meet its respective challenges, which you can see here. Data and information would be by taking stock of peatland literature, documentation, as well as conducting stakeholders consultation via our peat article for peat conferences of parties for each of the 8 countries we cover in 2022. We have identified specific research gaps for each country. These gaps were then translated into research topics for small research grants, which we give it out to deserving research groups to implement in their home countries to build out the identified research gap. You can see there that among us actors in this space under ASEAN, we need to collaborate more with this. Outreach and advocacy. Peatlands are still largely misunderstood and unknown in Southeast Asia. And our outreach and advocacy efforts aim to engage non-state actors and general public to both increase general awareness and improve the capacity of communities living near peatlands, especially when it comes to fire prevention and management. While our third pillars, business and investment, while conservation areas are effective in conserving protected peatlands, a large proportion of peatlands are not in protected areas. These unprotected peatlands in production areas continue to suffer from draining, burning, and peat subsidence due to the limits in land policies, economic consideration, and a lack of awareness and capacity. Additionally, sustainable peatland management in different landscapes and levels of economic activity requires expertise beyond conservation and science. The non-state actor stakeholders or partners include village-level communities, farmers and smallholders, unions, also research centers, CSOs, financial institutions, as well as experts on mentors. We need to go down to the ground if we want to be able to manage peatland sustainably, for sure. People for peat, like many others, had to pivot to fully virtual engagement due to the pandemic. But even so, as you can see on the screen, we have successfully engaged non-state actors across the region in a variety of events in each of our pillars of action. People for peats operates in 8 countries in ASEAN, and we have engaged over 20 experts and practitioners engaged in virtual meetings and webinars. Of course, in addition to the 18 panel of experts for the business hub. These are some of visual of our engagement highlights since the inception of the program in November 2019. And we are looking forward to continuing this work to more stakeholders in the final year of our program. Through various engagement, we found that there are more pressing challenges in having a sustainable business on peatland in Southeast Asia, which are sustainable business solution and associated supply chains are not proven at scale. Non-state actors have a limited capacity to develop their business sustainably on peatlands. And social impacts by peatland business are largely localized, not properly quantified and communicated effectively. The framework for sustainable peatland landscape revolve around the three aspects, which are protection, productivity, and inclusion. People for Peat's Secretariat does not, condone the conversion of pristine peatlands into agricultural landscape. So this is a very, clear position. I think it's not just us, but all players on this space. People for Peat's Secretariat work alongside existing related business to improve environmental protection, economic production, and social inclusion through business transformation intervention. Improvement in either criteria of environmental protection, economic production, and or social inclusion should not be at the price of sacrificing other criteria or criterion. On top of our peatland research and public engagement activities, we have launched the first cohort of a peatland specific business accelerator, which we call the People for Peat Business Hub. The overarching goal of the PFP Business Hub is to match peat relevant businesses that promise sustainability with experts covering different aspects of environmental protection, economic production, and social inclusion, so that this business can optimize their models, which then improve their chance of securing investment so that they can compete with traditional land use models that directly degrade peatland. Business Hub works with peat relevant businesses that are trying to be more sustainable, profitable, and inclusive, but lack the expertise to do so. There are three main phases for the program, which are screening, acceleration, and investment. Ultimately, the goal is to connect promising projects with the experts in peatland and business and responsible investors. The PFP Secretariat assembled a panel of experts, we call it a panel of experts, which consists of 18 persons, covering peat scientists, business experts, financiers, sustainable farming experts, and others to provide capacity building, technical assistance, group mentoring sessions, and a critique to the cohort projects to fine-tune and co-develop the business models with project owners. At the later part of the 8 months programs, these businesses will have a chance to pitch their projects to potential investors to secure funding if their projects are investment ready. Early stage projects were also included in our selection to give them access to capacity building and mentoring session to improve their chances of success. But these affiliate members, we call it affiliate members, will not be expected to pitch their projects to investors by the project's end. Cohort members, you can see here, including Lionheart, Agrotech, Pesona Kalbar Hijau, and so forth. While affiliate members, among others, are Sagu Paru Kering, Gerakan Cinta Desa, and Riau Women Working Group in Indonesia. So let us turn into a video that allow us to hear directly from some of the key stakeholders from the ground in this.
Prevention activities with real action in the ground, together with the local peoples and supported by government and the corporation, and it will be one of the best solutions.
My hope for the Asian peatlands is that there will be more awareness amongst the general public, amongst the government, amongst the private parties about the very important role peatlands play in regulating the climate, in maintaining biodiversity, and in providing an income for local and regional communities.
To maintain peatland ecosystem, it is essential to build capacity of local communities, especially in restoration and wise use of peat forest.
In the future, we hope to see more businesses on peatlands to operate sustainably.
Let's help protect our peat forest together, because we need to set a better future for our children.
Thank you. So the rest of the slide would be some key takeaways from my presentation, but I'd like to say on this key takeaways that peatlands are crucial for climate change mitigation, and non-state actors play an important role in sustainable peatland management. So over to you, Gita. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pakoni. Very happy to see all of the different regional actors as well coming together in the accelerator. That's quite exciting. One of them is in our district members in SEAC, so very happy to see that. Now, the third speaker, last but not least, would be representing ASEAN, and Ibu Edwin Sabarini is the MAFSA program coordinator. Another 10 minutes, Ibu Edwin, the time and floor is yours. Edwin, I think you're still muted.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Gita. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Edwin Sabarini. I'm the program coordinator for MAFSA. As mentioned by my colleagues in previous presentation, MAFSA is funded by IFAD, and it's implemented in partnership between ASEAN Secretariat, C4, and GEC. So today I will present to you a proposed concept for the regional multi-stakeholder platform on peatland and haze management in Southeast Asia. Okay, so the rationale of having a regional multi-stakeholder platform comes from an underlying root cause in peatland and haze issues in ASEAN. So as mentioned by the previous speakers, nearly 80% of natural peatlands in the region have been deforested and drained, and the majority conversion to plantation or agricultural use. And the annual land clearance using fire in peatland areas not only creates a thick blanket of haze that affects a lot of people in the region, but it also contributes to 1.3 to 3.1 current global CO2 emissions from fossil fuel combustion. Another underlying cause is the complexity of peatland management issues, where it involves multi-sector and stakeholders. And as mentioned by Dr. Michael Brady, the scientific information to support development of evidence-based policies are still limited. So now, based on the final review of ASEAN peatland management strategy, it has concluded that stakeholder engagement is key for sustainable peatland management and enhanced public awareness on peatland management issues. A platform could provide an opportunity for key stakeholders to discuss best practice, policy issues, programs, with the objective to stimulate enhanced exchange of data and knowledge, joint planning and program development, policy dialogue, as well as resource mobilization. And this is where MAFSA comes in. So we are supporting the region in establishing this regional stakeholder platform. So we envisage the purpose of the regional platform is to promote dialogue, partnership between policymakers, private sector, civil society in ASEAN to have a coordinated mitigation approach and mechanisms to exchange data and knowledge. So this relates to the previous speaker, Pak Koni, mentioning about the engagement of non-state actors, from also Dr. Brady and Dr. Parrish saying that data and knowledge exchange is very, very key. We also see the platform could build a diverse community of practice on sustainable peatland and haze management. It involves professionals from the environment, development, as well as social economic sectors. We hope that the platform could raise awareness on ecosystem services of peatland ecosystems, its relevance and also potential benefits for ASEAN member states. Also to facilitate the sharing of information, good practice, experiences that promotes joint planning and program development, generate and mobilize resources, as well as investments for sustainable tropical peatland management. And lastly, we hope that it helps disseminate policy and best practice on sustainable peatland management and haze and fire management outside ASEAN. So the form and function of the platform takes into consideration an existing regional coordination mechanism on peatland and haze in ASEAN. It also takes into account the recommendation from the final review of ASEAN peatland management strategy and also the ASEAN haze-free roadmap that's currently underway. For the stakeholder platform to operate effectively, it is expected to have a core group consisting of 20 members from selected stakeholders and environment practitioners, and also a secretariat handling the day-to-day operation. Building on the existing coordination mechanism, the ASEAN Task Force on Peatland will be the main member of the core group, together with representatives from economic and development sectors partners, as well as private sector and civil society. The platform, through its secretariat, will report to the committee under the Conference of Party to the ASEAN Agreement on Transboundary Haze Pollution. We see that the platform will also have engagement activities with stakeholders, seminars, capacity building activities, annual or biannual conference, and also web-based management, a knowledge platform on peatland and haze, which has been introduced to you by C4, the ASEAN Haze Portal. So this is what we see as the regional stakeholder building blocks and tools. So the building blocks are the regional stakeholder mapping and analysis, which MAFSA have conducted this past year, and also results and follow-up from the final review of ASEAN Peatland Management Strategy, as well as the ASEAN Haze-Free Roadmap. A MAFSA program is committed providing support to facilitate consultation, meetings, and also secretariat function at the early establishment of the platform. MAFSA, together with other ongoing ASEAN Peatland programs, have and will also continue to support the platform. These are what we see as tools that are currently available or are being developed for the platform activities, which include a regional data, information and result management system. We also have capacity building packages at the regional and national level. The mentioned knowledge and collaborative website, the 10-year investment framework, and also stakeholder engagement meetings such as policy and practice dialogue and platform conferences. So this ends my presentation, and thank you for your attention. Back to you, Peter.
Thank you so much, Ibu Edwin, and very promising to actually know that there is already a structure to convene all of the wonderful sharing of experience and know-how, as well as all of the wonderful knowledge management that have been shared previously. So now we have time for 2 questions, and I will maybe bring in all of the speakers back to the virtual stage, and the ones that are joining us in Glasgow will be joining us live from there. And we got 2 questions that is receiving the highest like. So thank you very much for all of your questions. The first one is about monitoring adaptive capacity and how it usually are a challenge to actually demonstrate the real impact of that. Maybe if we can go to probably the experience of the Mekong project from Peter's perspective, as well as maybe Berthold can share also key approaches and indicators that demonstrate increased adaptive capacity and resilience that is actually showing real impact. Maybe Peter, you can go first.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Look, to be honest, in the Mekong countries, we're at very initial stages of building some understanding within government and even in academia and local universities. So, we're not there yet. We don't have good case studies to demonstrate those sorts of things, but that's certainly something we're working towards, and our project is structured along those lines. So, dialogue, building understanding is a key thing, and unfortunately with COVID and all the other issues in Myanmar, we haven't had too many opportunities, to build those sorts of and have those consultations and build those dialogues. Yeah.
Noted. Thank you, Peter. And because you're saying that the project is geared towards that way, maybe we'll check again.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for that. Thank you, Peter. Mr. Berthold, do you have anything to maybe add on the first question?
Well, development of key indicators, maybe also based on vulnerability assessment, maybe also with the focus on resilience to pandemics as well as adaptation. That might also, that's one of our tasks. We have to also to coordinate on a regional level with our new ASEAN peatland management strategy. Big focus will be also on adaptation measures, which is quite necessary in times of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the succinct answer as well. And we have time for maybe going into our speakers in the Glasgow Pavilion. Maybe Dr. Michael, you want to add on to the findings in the knowledge management and C4's experience as well?
Sure. You can hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Just on the monitoring issue, we've been monitoring fire and haze for 30, almost 40 years now, and it's been very interesting to see the evolution of approaches. We spent 25 years looking at hotspots, which is a representation of fire, not entirely accurate. We're now moving into much more refined approaches, like looking at the actual burned area and understanding the type of vegetation that is burning. And there we're seeing, we called them forest fires initially, but now very little forest actually burns. It's more secondary vegetation, degraded lands, scrub lands, agricultural clearing. So that evolution in monitoring approaches is a very good sign, and we hope that we can, through our programs, expand that to have a common approach throughout ASEAN. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So to the second question, and possibly we can also hear from colleagues from Pak Faisal. In terms of the findings so far, one of the key funding needs that was identified in the investment portfolio under your presentation was also identifying the need to have a good monitoring system, and also how critical it is to actually manage peatland fire. Is there any experience that you've had so far in terms of actually establishing that and connecting that with investment opportunity?
So I think there has been progress made, significant progress made so far in some of the... Yeah.
There you go.
There has been progress made to date in some of the ASEAN member countries in attracting investment, both by the private sector, but also international investment in changing the paradigm for management of peatland systems. So I think there has been a lot of investment in re-wetting and fire prevention. And moving forward in terms of adaptation to climate change, one of the critical issues is preventing the fire and haze, which is one of them going to increase in intensity with the predicted increase in temperatures, and also reduced dry season rainfalls. So there needs to be more investment brought into that. And I think that some of the models which have been done on a small scale need to be scaled up, and we need to get the private sector and private financing institutions such as commercial or retail banks or agricultural development banks to be providing adequate finance for the best management practice implementation, and changing the existing plantation on peatlands or agriculture on peatland to be phased out to be more sustainable polluticulture and other climate-friendly options. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pak Faisal. That was a clear answer. I'd like to actually close out with this question for both Ibu Edwin and Pak Nirata Samadi, Pak Koni. So in terms of sustainability peatland engagement, what type of parameter, so I guess Bu Edwin can speak on it from the regional perspective with the proposed structure, and Pak Koni from experience in connecting the hub itself. What are the specific parameters that all stakeholders can actually agree upon when thinking about how to address the needs? How do you bring win-win solutions that might be not an easy task for a convener? So maybe Pak Koni, you can start.
Right. Thanks. Very good question, and rather challenging to respond. So us, because we are trying to connect non-state actors to deal or to promote this sustainable peatland management. So what we are seeing is actually the response on how to create a business out of conserving peatland. So that would be, let's say, the parameter that you asked for. But of course, this is, something that has to be codified in order to be able to say firmly that this is actually the parameter. But from the experience that we are doing, a response to develop a business on peatlands is actually something that can be seen as a good sign on the way to go on better managing the peatland. Hope this clear enough to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Koni. That's quite also straightforward, but not easy to achieve, as I imagine. Bu Edwin, you want to add on to that, Bu, from the proposed structure?
Yes, I do agree with Pak Koni that it is a difficult task, but I'm sure with good intentions from all stakeholders, it is achievable in the future. So I would just want to add that the stakeholders, all stakeholders, whether it's from the government, from the community, will need to agree on a mechanism of sharing information and data, and coming up with a a concerted effort, concerted way of dealing with the issues that have been identified now, and come up with a more integrated solution that can be implemented by all the stakeholders. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. And thanks a lot for all of the questions that comes in. We actually have maybe another 5 questions to go through, but unfortunately our time is up. And thank you so much for those that have tuned in the virtual stage for today's session. And also thank you for the one that is joining us in the Glasgow Pavilion. Again, all of the questions we can communicate back to the speakers, and maybe we'll figure out how they can respond to it directly, because it's excellent question. And I would love to give a virtual round of applause to all of the speakers today, both virtually and also joining us live from Glasgow. Virtual applause for everyone for a successful session. I'd like to close out the session with another word. Yesterday's word is people. So today's word is integrated. So the I stands for intention towards ensuring peat is actually key for collaboration. The N stands for non-state actors, requires a framework and a structure of governance for them to work together. The T stands for time during pandemic should not be an excuse to stop protecting our peat. The E stands for exclusivity doesn't belong in the world where co-created investment framework at the macro and micro level is already there. The G stands for government and non-state actors needs to come together and actually work out what is currently missing. The R stands for reasonable needs that are co-created and co-identified by the stakeholder should be our ways forward. The A stands for actions needs to be based on integrated data sets and knowledge management system. The T stands for time is now. We have to work together. The E stands for exciting new discoveries on peatland from data to opportunities should actually be integrated in the existing system. And the D, last but not least, do it now. Thank you so much for joining the panel today. My name is Gita Shahrani, the moderator for today, and hopefully we will see you soon in another session under the Peatland Pavilion. Thank you so much.